What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Stochastic channel. And today we're talking college football DFS ahead of the Week 1 Saturday main slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook, an offer for those of you new to the platform. Make a $50 wager and you are going to get $250 in the form of free bets. First $50 come when that wager settles, and then you will get $50 each of the subsequent weeks. You will need to use that within 7 days of issuance. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER, but make sure to take advantage of this awesome bankroll building opportunity. We don't get these a lot, so make sure to use that. A couple housekeeping notes. 14-game slate, FCS teams. Those of you that are new here, typically we use a data sheet as a graphic. Basically a team-by-team matchup guide showing you the game environment stuff, all the players within the games, their major opportunities, passing attempts, rushing attempts over the last 4 weeks, targets, you name it, it's there, and it helps contextualize the slate. And it really helps me. I use it kind of as a crutch when we do these videos because it is literally all the information in one place. We don't have data yet, so this will be back after Week 1 once we get one game played for each of these teams. Until then, I'll be rifling through tabs, so excuse me if you have the errant pause once in a while. I'll try to talk you through that, but it's a fun slate. We finished the first round of projections. They'll update throughout the next 24 hours, but I think we got a pretty good read here, and we can dive right in. Boston College takes on Northern Illinois. It's an 8.5-point spread. The total in the game is 50 points. Northern Illinois implied for around 20, 21 points. We'll start here. We've got veteran signal caller Rocky Lombardi back. Excuse me, I'm already losing my voice. That's not good. A couple minutes into the show. Rocky Lombardi's back, 7,400, former Michigan State signal caller. This guy has good mobility here, but low total in the game, decent price tag on Lombardi. I think he's probably just going to be in your GPP categories only, dealt with a ton of injuries last year. But he does have some explosive playmakers to potentially stack. It's just not, premier game environment on this slate with the total being pretty low. So I think just GPP only for most of this Northern Illinois team. And then on the depth chart, as far as, like these MAC players, Northern Illinois, I think you have a pretty nasty committee at running back. Ontario Brown's there, but they got a couple transfers like Gavin Williams is there. They moved Justin Lynch from quarterback to running back. He's a dynamic rusher. You have Kendrell Flowers. I think Brown probably leads the committee, but you might see as many as 4 guys here, which is very, very difficult for me to get to. At receiver, Trayvon Rudolph is back. He's the most intriguing player to me by far. This receiver's had explosive games in the past. Unfortunately, he's battled a lot of injuries, so there's not too much to go off of him, but he is practicing in camp. Go back to 2021, look at some of the stats here. Rudolph is an absolute boss. I think the wide receiver 2 and the wide receiver 3 are going to be Billy Dozier and Messiah Travis. Likely going to see some rotation with Casper Rutkiewicz, which I think I'm saying that right. Probably not. But ultimately, Northern Illinois is going to be a run-based attack. I think the stacks probably stop with Trayvon Rudolph unless you're getting really, really crazy in the depths here. Boston College, they moved to a new signal caller after they saw Phil Jurkovec go to Pittsburgh. And with Boston College, Emmett Moorhead takes over. Actually played really well down the stretch for this team. His price tag comes in at 7,600, which I don't love, just being a pretty good slate for quarterbacks. But, like maybe for tournaments, he's not the most mobile guy in the world, which is also another concern here for Moorhead. But the offense does have some viability overall. Running back Pat Garwo is back. The big concern with Garwo is they listed him as a co-starter with Alex Broom. They kind of had to use Garwo as a feature back at times, but they didn't start the year with that approach. They add like Kai Robichaud from Western Kentucky. Cam Barfield's also back. This is another position which I think is probably going to come down to a timeshare. Don't love Garwo's price at $6K. We'll find other more attractive options. The receiver room is rebuilt. They all obviously have to do with Zay Flowers departing, but you have Ryan O'Keefe coming in from Central Florida. I think he does operate as the one right away here. And then I think Joseph Griffin is probably your 2. Jaden Williams, I would guess, is the 3. He's 4,800. You got a little bit of a gap there. They list Dino Tomlin, interestingly, above him. He was listed as a backup on this depth chart. But ultimately, I think it's probably all the way up for O'Keefe, all the way down for Williams, or just looking elsewhere. They listed co-starters at tight end between George Takix and Jeremiah Franklin, which is a position I don't have a lot of interest in. Going to our second game, it's Tennessee taking on Virginia. Wow, how the mighty have fallen for Virginia. This is a team we used to target every single week with Armstrong and that trio of receivers that were awesome. But now they're 38-point underdogs. The total's 55.5. Yikes. We'll start with Virginia. My best advice here is to X them out. They're implied under 10 points. Tony Muskett's their new signal caller. He's an FCS transfer. Expecting a running back by rotation with Parrish Jones and Mike Hollins and Kobe Pace, the Clemson transfer. Kobe Pace was listed as a backup. And then the receiver position, holy smokes, this receiving room is awful. They lost everybody of consequence. Your top returning player here is Malachi Fields. We'll see here, man, but I do not have a lot of interest in Virginia. I think Demick Starling and Malik Washington, the transfer, are the other guys to mention here, but we can do better than mid 3K, 4K receiving options for Virginia. Tennessee, this is a team we should be interested in a little bit, especially if the offense can have even 90% of what we saw with, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt. Of course, they're moving to Joe Milton at quarterback. I personally view that as a downgrade, but some people think Joe Milton's, first-round draft pick. We'll see on that, but he's definitely not as mobile as Hendon Hooker was. That's the biggest difference, I think, between these guys. He's also more erratic. With that said, what do we really need from him here? They have a 47 implied team total over this putrid Virginia team. This could be like a John Reese Plumlee situation from Thursday night where, even if they run the score up on this team, Joe Milton probably has a lot to do with it, and it's definitely a quarterback-friendly offense. Milton at 8,700 is a pretty favorable price tag for this implied team total. We can take some shots here for sure. Running back is a 50-50 timeshare between Jabari Small and Jalen Wright. Viewing this almost the exact same as last year. I like to take shots on Tennessee runners because they score a ton of points. And there's a chance they increase their run rate this year going from Hendon Hooker to Milton. We'll see how that plays out. The two listed starters for Tennessee's receivers were Brew McCoy and Ramel Keaton. This makes some sense to me. They're the two players that have the most experience in the offense, but I don't think they're the most explosive. Squirrel White was the co-starter with Dante Thornton, the transfer from Oregon. I tread carefully with those two guys. Keaton at 4,100 is going to play a lot. He played a ton last year when Cedric Tillman got injured. It really took till the bowl game, really late in the year for Squirrel White to pop off. So I'm not sure if this is a guy that's going to see 100% of the routes. I think he's the best athlete this team has, at receiver specifically, but I'm a little concerned about the snaps and routes, especially with like Brew McCoy cheaper. We know Brew McCoy likely to be their wide receiver one this year. I'd rather play McCoy over Squirrel White straight up, and I think Keaton is a decent dart throw. Really, really questionable why Tennessee is so cheap on this slate. These are really good plays overall. I'll be looking to play a lot of Tennessee. Third game, we have Colorado taking on TCU. I've been waiting for this game for a long time. This is going to be a sick game. But actually, first and foremost, I got to tell you about our package. This is absolutely awesome. 50% off your first week with Stochastics College Football Package, projections, ownership projections, written analysis. The data sheet you've seen in previous videos is accessible on the site with this package. You can filter through it, look at it as long as you want. So, you don't have to like pause the video or something to actually look at these teams anymore. We have it, and we have a limited time offer for 50% off. The link's in the video description below. Take advantage of this. It's about as good as it gets. And it's literally like my heart and soul in this work. So if you've done this already, I appreciate you. Thank you. Means a lot. All right. Now we go to probably my favorite game, real life game. Colorado TCU. TCU is a 20.5 point favorite. I think this is probably going to go to 21, 64 total. This is going to be an awesome game. And I think we have some explosive plays on both sides. We'll start with Colorado. I don't have as much interest here just because their implied team total is about 21 points. Shedeur Sanders does have some mobility, but we're not talking about like an electric dual threat guy here. He does live in the pocket, and he's making a massive jump from FCS to Power 5. He's playing TCU, a team that played for the national title in his first game. I think we can find better signal callers, but he should be in the GPP pool because he can run a little bit. The backfield is late news central. I mean, Alton McCaskill is a question for this game. He's about 18 months removed from his ACL, and he's still not all the way back. I think that's a pretty big concern from him. And even if it is, I would not anticipate a full workload. They do have guys like Cavassier Smoke from Kentucky, Sevion Wilkerson. He's a Jackson State kid. I'm expecting this to be a committee. As a 21-point underdog, I'll pass on the Colorado backs. Receiver, we can take some shots. They didn't list a depth chart, so to me, it's not clear who their starters are. My projections would peg the two USF guys as starters here. That's Jimmy Horn and Xavier Weaver. It's tricky, though, because Travis Hunter, their starting corner, is going to play some offense, but not enough to be a full-time starter. Does he get on the field enough for us to roster him at 4,900? I don't know. I don't know how much they play him. They have a lot of transfers here, and they have pretty good 4-stars. Like Adam Hopkins probably plays a bit here. 4-star receiver. Actually, can't see his price. It's probably the minimum. Yeah, he's the Stone Min. I wouldn't use him, but I mean, like, what I'm saying is I don't think they need to use Hunter full-time. Tarvaris Dawson from Auburn's there. Jalen Ellis from Baylor. Willie Gaines, Javon Antonio. We need to see this team in action to kind of realize what they're going to do. I don't have a lot of confidence in the snaps outside of anyone not named Weaver or Horn, and they're pretty expensive. Tight end's a mess here. They lost their starter already this spring. I don't know when he's coming back. Elijah Yelverton is a former Iowa guy that retired and came back to play for Colorado. Medically retired. Maybe he starts and is viable. We'll see. I don't know. He's the Stone Min too. TCU, they moved to Chandler Morris. This is a guy I have a ton of interest in. I mean, electric dual threat. The guy started over Duggan last year. The total in the game, 64. TCU is a 42 implied team total here. We can definitely get behind Chandler Morris at this price. And I think you could stack him too. They have Kendall Briles as their OC. Obviously, I believe it's a downgrade from Riley to Briles, but I mean, that's a guy that before last year when he kind of had some of the shine rub off him, he was considered an electric play caller. So first of all, excited about the quarterback position. I'll play some of them. Lose a bunch of runners. You move to Amani Bailey, which I don't think is a huge downgrade. He started at Louisiana, came over as a transfer. Unfortunately, he was just parked behind Demarcado and Miller. That'll happen. That's tough. Behind him, you have Trey Sanders. A lot of interest here, too. This is an Alabama transfer, really high recruit, listed as the backup. He's 3,900, a really cheap punt option. We don't know what the split looks like. TCU used this split in the past, and that Kendrick kind of just broke out with the job. But I'm not 100% sure Amani Bailey has a feature back role. We'll wait and see here, but I think both these TCU backs are worth taking shots on at this price. Amani at 5.4, Sanders at 3.9 with the massive team total. And then receiver, this is really tricky. They have so many transfers coming in. I'm not sure how their depth chart actually shakes out in the end here. But as usual, we'll give our best predictions. So right away, you return Sevion Williams. That's where I'd start. He was listed as a starter with Warren Thompson, which surprised me. Warren Thompson's 3.2K. You should be interested there. And then they listed 3 co-starters for the final receiver position: John Paul Richardson, JoJo Earl, and Jack Beck. TCU will run 4 wide a fair amount, so I think they mix and match these guys. But at their prices, I don't have a ton of interest. Like JoJo Earl at 6.9, listed in a 3-way timeshare, is pretty rough. Richardson 6.5, that's not much different. And Beck at 5.8. I think I'd rather play Sevion Williams or just go all the way down to Warren Thompson at 3.2K. Not to mention like Jalen Robinson, former dynamic player at UCF, couldn't get on the field at Ole Miss. How much does he play? How much does their freshman Cordell Russell play? He's a 4-star. We'll see. Kind of a nasty situation, but at least we get one cheapie with Warren Thompson. Going to our next game, Arkansas State, Oklahoma. How about it? 57.5 total, 35.5 point spread. Arkansas State is a team you X out immediately, 11-point implied team total. JT Schrout, your signal caller. If you've seen JT Schrout play, you don't need me to explain that this guy is atrocious. Backfield is going to be a committee, in my opinion. You've got Brian Snead, Jaquez Cross. Not sure how the rotation breaks out, but I do not have a lot of confidence ultimately in whoever is going to end up running for this team. This is going to be a complete disaster, unfortunately, for Arkansas State. Zach Wallace also there. They were listed in a 3-way committee. The only thing I'll say, which is interesting, is they have pretty good receivers. Like Corey Rucker transferred back after, short stint at the Power 5. Jeff Foreman was basically their wide receiver one last year. He's back. Courtney Jackson comes in, Syracuse transfer. You have some depth here. I just don't have any trust in Shrout to deliver the ball to these guys. So it's kind of a pass for me across Arkansas State. Oklahoma has an enormous team total, 46.5. Big concern is like playing time. They've got a 5-star freshman in Jackson Arnold. I think they give him a couple snaps probably in games like this. Gabriel's sick, though. I mean, one of the most efficient passers in college football. He actually ran a little bit last year, which was positive. Ended up getting him hurt, but Gabriel at 9,100, definitely okay with this. The backfield for this team was not what I expected. I thought they had a bunch of different ways they could go, but it was Marcus Major and Tawi Walker listed as co-starters, Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes listed as co-backups. So right away, like Tawi Walker, 3,700 should pique your interest. Marcus Major at 6.3 is fine too. Makes Barnes the most maybe overpriced player at the running back position. He's listed as a essentially third stringer. Yeah, Walker, I mean, at 3,700, we should be taking some shots here for sure. Receiver, they listed Jaleel Farouk, Drake Stoops, and Andrel Anthony as their starters. No real noise here. Anthony's 4.8K, and the guy played at Michigan. Pretty dynamic guy when he got the ball. He just didn't always see the field. I mean, parked behind guys like Ronnie Bell. So it's not exactly a huge slight to him. But I have a lot of interest in Andrel Anthony at this price too. These cheap guys, like these guys below 5K on teams with massive implied team totals, I'm definitely going to take shots. I need to admit I have this internal bias against Drake Stoops. I just hated that he played more than Marvin Mims. But he plays a lot. And he plays for Oklahoma with a 46.5 team total. With a good quarterback. I need to put Drake Stoops in my player pool. I will admit it, and I will make the correct changes to my process and not be a dummy with Drake Stoops. Next game, we have Ball State and Kentucky. A game I bet Kentucky in this. We'll talk about why. Let's start with the Ball State side. This team is a mess. They moved to Layne Hatcher at quarterback. I mean, like Arkansas State product. He cannot run. So for DFS, I mean, this guy's negative 144 career rushing yards. X him out. You're probably honestly Xing out the whole team. They're not even implied for 12 points. But Layne Hatcher, my goodness, quit taking sacks. Like, move forward once in a while. Running back, I would normally say play Marquez Cooper because he was the second highest graded rusher in the MAC according to PFF. But they listed him as a co-starter with Vaughn Pemberton. If they actually do this and use a tandem between these guys, their coach should be fired immediately. Enough of a concern where I don't want to play Cooper. Just a complete mess. Receiver, they don't have anybody above the stone minimum. This is hilarious. Brady Hunt and Tanner Koziel, they're two tight ends. Stone minimum. I mean, they both play a ton. This team uses 12 personnel a lot. I guess if you need a minimum guy, like Ty Robinson, the Colorado transfer, was listed as a starter. Malcolm Gilly was listed as a starter. Chin Magwood. This is absolutely hilarious. No players above the stone min. I'm still probably not getting there for what it's worth. Kentucky, they have Liam Cohn back. OC that put Will Levis on the map. They now move to Devin Leary, former NC State signal caller, injured last year, but has previously been pretty efficient. He's not the most mobile guy, but he can definitely orchestrate a pocket passing offense. 8,100 is not exactly a great price, but as usual, I'm going to take shots on the guys that have massive team totals, and this one comes in around 38 points. That's pretty good here. Leary should be in the GPP pool. Not quite as good as some of the other players we talked about already, like TCU signal caller Chandler Morris or anything, but he's there. He's playable. Running back Ray Davis, I think, is fine to play. They're going to run all over Ball State, and this is the Vanderbilt transfer. Incredible efficiency for Ray Davis. I'm not sure what the split looks between him and Deme Sumo Kongbai, but I do think it is pretty clearly Ray Davis at the top. They listed a 3 running back sort of backup timeshare between Sumo Kongbai, Juton McClain, and Ramon Jefferson. So I don't really want to play any of those guys, but Davis lone back at the top, completely fine. Receiver, we know exactly who's going to be out here. Top 3 guys return: Barry and Brown, Dane Key, Tay Robinson. I don't think there's any issues playing any of them, and I don't think there's a lot separating them. Robinson was hurt last year. He played through a lot of injuries, so maybe you could buy low on him. But, I mean, he's not as highly recruited as Brown or Key, the 2 former 4-stars. I plan on mixing and matching all 3 Kentucky receivers. They're quick, like very similar in price. 55 for Brown, 52 for Key, 5K for Robinson. All excellent plays. Tight end, no No way I'm playing these guys. They're going to use 4 of them. Next game, Utah State, Iowa. 24-point spread in favor of the Hawkeyes. 43.5 total. Let's dive in. First of all, we have some injury concerns at the quarterback position. McNamara has been banged up a lot. I think he's still going to come out here and suit up. I don't think I have a lot of interest in playing this team. I guess we will see, but yeah, pretty rough game. I'm not even seeing this on the board here anymore. Did they pull this game? Where is McNamara? Yeah, okay. Looks like they pulled this one. Anyway, we'll go to a different game. This was at one point on the slate. East Carolina takes on Michigan. Thank goodness we don't have to talk about that. This game, we have a 36.5-point spread and a 52 total. East Carolina refuses to put out a depth chart referencing Nick Saban in a lot of their posts. That's a complete mess. And right away, they won't name a starting quarterback. I don't think it's going to be a co-starting situation. I think Mason Garcia is the guy. He hasn't played a lot, but he's been behind Holton Hilaire for a long time too. I have no confidence in East Carolina. They have an 8-point implied team total. I'm maxing out the whole team. If you want to play like a running back, Marlon Gunn's going to be in a timeshare with Rajai Harris. Receiver, I had to guess at the depth chart just because they didn't release one. My best guess for the starters are Keelan Robinson, Josiah Hatfield, and Jalen Johnson. But if you read their beat and stuff, it sounds like they also want to mix in Chase Sowell, Ryan King, and Jarrett Gardner. Not playing any ECU. Michigan, massive team total. We've seen them in this spot many times, luckily. You want to play some Michigan guys, just 2 live in GPPs. And J.J. McCarthy, 9,400. I don't think he does enough to warrant this price tag. He does run, but he doesn't run enough, especially in games where they kill teams. They try not to run him. They're not going to air it out. I have a hard time getting to him. Running back, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, I think both very live here. You're getting a bit of a discount on Blake Corum after the injury, but I don't know if they run either of these guys too hard. With that said, efficiency is going to be there all day. They're very affordable. It's a good running back slate. I actually don't hate 4 running backs if that's where you end up. Receiver, it's the usual issues with Michigan. Are they going to throw enough to potentially get there? We'll see. Their top listed receiver, Cornelius Johnson, I think that makes sense. And then behind him, Roman Wilson. They've been banged up in camp, so I think you probably see a nastier rotation than normal. Like coming out of spring, I thought we were going to see Peyton O'Leary start for this team. Thought Tyler Morris was going to play. They both have been in and out of practice. So they took Christian Dixon and listed him as the wide receiver 3. And then the next guys up on the 2 deep were Frederick Moore, Carmelo English, who's a 4-star freshman, and Samaj Morgan. Pretty rough going for Michigan. They're going to use 2 tight ends a lot too. You've got Colston Loveland. He's their second most expensive receiver at 5,200. They add AJ Barner from Indiana. There's some shots if you want, but I'm mostly going to focus my attention on Corum and Edwards. Next game up, Mercer and Ole Miss. So no FCS spreads yet. SP Plus projects this at 30 points, 46 total. Don't play Mercer. I don't really have a lot to say on this team. I guess just to give you the cliff notes on Mercer. This team has the same head coach and OC. They did play in week 0. They beat North Alabama 17-7. They were 7-4 last year, 68 plays per game, 45% pass rate. Quarterbacks Carter Peavy, running backs Mike Cabell, Al Wooten, Parker Roble. They're all there. They all use them. You don't play a receiver for this team. Roble's actually a receiver that gets a decent amount of work, but X out Mercer. Ole Miss, they did not release a depth chart, but most of their B reporters seem to think that it's going to be Jackson Dart under center. I don't really care who's under center. They both are mobile, which is me. Team total around 38 points. It could be even wider than this. Pricing thinks Dart starts 7,200. The only thing I'll say here is I wouldn't be surprised if they use 2 guys. They did this last year. So I don't have any confidence that Dart plays the whole game, especially like Sanders is a premier transfer and he wasted his final year of college. Like, I mean, to be the backup, maybe he wants to sit. I don't know. But it's not looking good for Spencer Sanders. Running back, we've got Judkins, my man, and Jam Griffin. Bentley is back too. I think Bentley's probably your like pass catching scat back, but Judkins at 6,600. I mean, might as well give him away for free. Play Judkins. He's solid. Receiver, Zachary Franklin's questionable for this game. I don't think he plays. Wasn't on the depth chart. Well, they didn't list the depth chart, but I guess depth chart projections from beat reporters do not list him. We'll qualify that. The best beat reporters for Ole Miss do list their projected depth chart, so I'll go through that with you guys. They have Trey Harris, and they have Dayton Wade and Jordan Watkins. I think they're going to rotate Jalen Knox, from Missouri guy, probably gets on the field a little bit here. Caden Prescorn and Michael Trigg are the most interesting options to me personally. Prescorn at 3,800, he projects to be the starter according to beat reporters over Trigg. I wouldn't be surprised if they use more two tight sets. Trigg's the former USC transfer. Prescorn comes from Memphis. They're 3,800 and 3,500 apiece. Both of them are good receivers. So you have very cheap options here in the pass game. And then again, Jordan Watkins, 4,900. Trey Harris is 61. If you want to listen or play Dayton Wade, he's 36 too. I have very little issues with that behind the big team total here. Next game, Portland State, Oregon. This game is a mess. Portland State projected 47-point underdog, 65 total. Cliff notes on a team you should X out. Portland State. Last year, they went 4-7. They did play San Jose State close, 21-17, but 69 plays per game, 41% pass rate. Dante Cheers, their quarterback, he's really good at running the ball. 609 rushing yards. I don't think he can really have that success against Oregon, so I'll be fading at 5,700. They had a million running backs last year that touched the ball. And a couple of them are pretty good players, like Andrew Van Buren from Boise State. You guys know I hate him if you've been watching these videos for any length of time. Christian Grubb is there from UCLA, but then they returned 3 other guys that played over 100 snaps, and they didn't really have many guys that played over 100 snaps. Receiver, Jermaine Braddock is there from San Jose State. You've got your second leading returner, Nate Bennett, back. McLean Griffin back. He was your fourth. Your tight end, Elias Spencer. And then you got a couple interesting guys like Darian Chase. He's been mentioned a lot. Jared Casey's a former quarterback playing receiver. I don't know. This team's not implied for enough points for me to target, so we probably spent too much time here. Bo Nix at 10.10K. I don't think he plays a whole game here if this actually comes in as a 47-point spread. Nix is electric. He could be like the John Rice Plumlee of this slate as well. He's another candidate for that. We're so dynamic, could break the slate at any point, but he's probably not going to play a whole game. So weigh that appropriately. He's super expensive at 10.1K. Backfield, I'll definitely take shots. Projected committee between Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington. They're the same two guys that handled the bar last year. They're the same two guys that are back this year. Just very, very cheap, explosive ability against the FCS team. Receiver, so Oregon did not list a depth chart, so beat reporter projections here. Take it for what it's worth. Think we have a decent idea. 2 listed starters as transfers and Troy Franklin. The 2 transfers were Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson from Troy. Pricing here favors Holden, 5,100. They listed Chris Hudson as a more expensive receiver than him. He was listed as a backup according to the projections. I think Holden's where I would go if you're playing a receiver, but Troy Franklin's their best option, their leading guy back. And Tez, only 300 less than him. That was a bit surprising to me. Tight end's going to be a rotation. You've got Terrence Ferguson, Pat Herbert, and Casey Kelly from Ole Miss all here. Next game, we head to Rice, Texas. Fun game overall. This game is a 35.5-point spread at 58.5 total. And Rice has JT Daniels under center. He's very hard to roster because he takes so many sacks. Texas is going to get after him playing for Rice. I'm not playing Daniels. Running back is a 3-way committee. You have Juma Otoviano. You have Ari Broussard. This is going to be a 3-way committee that I do not think you can play. The third listed guy in this committee, excuse me, as I pull up the Rice depth chart I made. Dean Connor, sorry. At receiver, this is the only place I'd have some interest, but Luke McCaffrey is 7,100. Like, oh my goodness. For an 11.5 implied team total, you cannot play that. But they do have Matt Sykes, UCLA transfer at 3,400. This is interesting. He's listed as a starter for this team. Take some shots on Sykes, maybe. Can't play McCaffrey at 7,100. There's so much opportunity cost. Texas, Quinn Ewers at 7,700. Texas has a 47 implied team total. You can play Ewers, even though he does not use his mobility at all. It's so frustrating to see Ewers just take sacks and never run. Fearless in the pocket, but man, he's got to improve some things. Regardless, price very favorable for a 47 team total. Backfield, think this is going to be a committee. This is not the Bijan Robinson show, but Jonathan Brooks listed starters. Cedric Baxter, CJ Baxter, I think he's listed on here. Yes. Listed as the backup, Keelan Robinson third. This is according to beat reporters, so take it for what it's worth. Brooks at 53, I think is interesting. Baxter at 55, I take shots on both. Robinson at 42, I'm probably just going to play the top two. Receiver, basically what we expected. Xavier Worthy, Whittington, and A.D. Mitchell listed as the starters. They're the top three guys in pricing, and they're all pretty affordable. Whittington's at 4.7K, Mitchell at 5.5, Worthy at 6.6. You can play them all. Jatavian Sanders, they're starting tight end at 3.7. This is a laughable price. And then I'll take some shots on Isaiah Nair, too. Wyoming transfer towards ACL last year, 3,400. I thought he was going to start. Probably just shaking off some rust from the injury, but this is a very good player. You can play any of these top four Texas guys. Top five, really, when you include the tight end Sanders. Next game, we get to Boise State taking on Washington. 14-point spread, 58.5 total. Boise has a 22 implied team total. Taylon Green is back under center. Interestingly, they listed Colt Fulton as a more expensive quarterback on DraftKings. I don't know why. Taylon Green, 6,800. I have some interest, but they change OCs, and the guy's a doofus. He's been very vocal about not wanting Taylon Green to run. That's the only thing he does well. So I have some pause with Taylon Green, but his price is playable. Running back, they use George Halani and Ashton Genty in a timeshare. In other matchups, it's going to be a lot more favorable, but 22 implied team total against Washington. I think we can do better. Receiver, they lost Latrell Caples. That should set up Stefan Cobbs as the clear number one. And from there, I think you look at Billy Bowens and Eric McAllister. They're the other two listed starters. Just not a good price tag on these guys. Like Eric McAllister should probably be the stone minimum. Billy Bowens at like 3.5K. Instead, Bowens is 5.2. McAllister is 4.1. Not playable. Riley Smith, their tight end. He's 3.3. Probably the most interesting player outside of Cobbs, but tough to play Boise. Washington, we get Michael Penix back. Massive team total, 8,400. You can play him on any slate. The upside is enormous. They have a team total that's still pretty good here, 36, not near the top, but definitely not in a range where we're Xing out. Ran a little bit last year, more than he did at Indiana, which is good. I love Daniel Johnson, or Dylan, geez, got to say his name right. I was mixing Daniel Nada and Dylan Johnson, the two transfers. Dylan Johnson from Mississippi State, 5,200. Pass catching back, obviously play with Mike Leach, should set up very well in this offense. I think he's a solid target at 52. Daniel Nada, I think, is going to be their backup, the Arizona State transfer. I think Johnson handles most of this work. Richard Newton's still back. Will Nixon's back. Expecting a committee backfield to some degree with Johnson at the helm, but you have such a good pass-catching floor with him. This is solid. Top three receivers are back. I'd be trying to play one of Romo Dunes, Jalen McMillan, or Jalen Polk. Prices are 73, 69, and 57. There's all good price tags for these guys. Giles Jackson's injured, so he had been their situational four. They listed Jeremy Bernard and Denzel Boston as the two after that. I don't think they're priced to play. I would rather play a tight end. Jack Westover and Devin Culp, 33 and 3,100. They split time almost evenly, but there's a lot of touchdown equity with these guys for tournaments. So not the worst plays. Don't love them. Next game we'll get to is Ohio State, Indiana. Fun game here. And right away, we have Ohio State. Kyle McCord listed as the starter. Expecting two guys to play in this game. That would be Devin Brown is the other one. I just realized I made a mistake. I had my tab shrunk on my computer. Utah State, Iowa is on this slate. I am a complete bozo. I will go back to that game. My apologies. Those of you in the comments, roast me effectively. Week one, Russ. We're knocking it off, but man. All right. At least we didn't miss it after the video. Let's stick with Ohio State for now, and then we'll jump back. McCord is going to start. I think you're going to see Devin Brown play in this game too. Makes it really tough to play, even though Ohio State is a 31-point favorite, 58.5 total. Nearly 45 implied team total is very, very good. So, I mean, we want to play Ohio State. I'm just not sure we could do so with the quarterbacks. At running back, It's a split between Trevion Henderson and Mayan Williams. They actually got a lot of really effective play out of Dallin Hayden and Chip Trainum down the stretch. I think you see all four. I would rather take shots on Trevion and Mayan, just massive upside against Indiana. Receiver is receiver. They're the same three guys as last year because Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't play. Marvin Harrison at 91. I would rather play Ibuka at 74. There was very little separating these guys in terms of targets. Now, efficiency-wise, this is a different story. Marvin Harrison's a baller. Ibuka is very good in his own right. Ibuka gets carries on the ground. I would rather play Ibuka straight up. Fleming at 59, he's the situational wide receiver 3. And then this is going to be such a bad blowout that you probably do see some of these young players. Xavier Johnson's been here for a long time, situational deep threat for this team. You have Carnell Tate, dynamic freshman. Jaden Ballard's listed as a backup. These guys are going to get some run. Cade Stover's the tight end. He's at 4,100, always playable as a random touchdown or bust guy, like all Ohio State tight ends. Indiana does not have a listed starter at quarterback. They should start Taven Jackson. I don't know if they will. Brendan Sorsby is the other guy. Neither of them are playable. They have a 13.75 implied team total. They use 3 running backs between Josh Henderson, Christian Turner, and Jalen Lucas. Don't play any of them. Cam Camper's coming off an ACL, 5,500. Apparently he's going to play in this game. Maybe. I'm probably passing, but maybe is what I'll say. Camper normally is just a target hog. You also have EJ Williams and Donovan McCulley as the projected starters. Don't love that. EJ Williams never productive with Clemson. He's very cheap at the stone minimum, so you could get to him. McCulley's former quarterback. He's 3,700. Don't hate it. Don't love it either. Going back to Iowa, the game I missed. Probably should just skip it anyway. But anyway, Utah State. We've got Cooper Lagasse at quarterback, or Laga, I think is how you actually pronounce it. Laga, if we're being fancy. That's how they say it on the broadcast. Listed as the starter here. Some mobility for Laga. Not going to play in this game environment. Iowa's defense still very, very good. Implied for under 10 points implied team total. You have co-starters listed at running back, Robert Briggs and Devon Booth. Nope. Wide receiver, listed Jalen Royals and Terrell Vaughn as the starters. The third wide receiver spot came down to a co-starting position between Otto Tia and Colby Bowman. Royals would be my favorite, but 3,700, you can do better on this slate just straight up. Going to the Iowa side, Cade McNamara allegedly is going to play in this game. They're massive favorites, so don't be surprised if he gets pulled at any point. He can't run. They do have a good team total here, and I don't think Iowa's going to be quite as run-heavy. Iowa's a 24-point favorite, a 43.5 team total. This is somewhat intriguing as just a pure GPP option at 6.6. But again, like TCU signal colored right in this range. I know exactly who I'm going to for cash gains, and it's not McNamara. For running back, you've got Caleb Johnson, you have LaShawn Williams, and you have Jason Patterson. Caleb Johnson is going to get the first crack at this backfield. He was extremely efficient in a small sample. Look at yards after contact per attempt, force missed tackles. He's 5,700. He can catch the ball. He's an excellent play against a putrid Utah State defense. And then the Iowa receivers. All right. So Caleb Brown was listed as a backup behind Nico Reganey and Dante Vines. Luke Lachey and Eric All, they're the tight ends. They use 12 personnel a lot. I'd probably just bank on this 12 personnel usage with Lachey and All rather than play a receiver here for Iowa. All right, so prior to the Iowa mishap, we talked about Ohio State. So that puts us at Buffalo, Wisconsin, no longer missing Big Ten teams. Total 28 points, or excuse me, total of 54 points, the spread of 28. Cole Snyder is the signal caller for Buffalo. He is awful. Do not play Cole Snyder. Running back is the three-way committee. Ron Cook is at the helm. Mike Washington Jr. is behind him. And Al J. Henderson's third. All these guys got work last year because of injuries. Ron Cook at 4,400 is the most intriguing, but expecting 3 guys to be used against a good Wisconsin front 7. I will pass. They lost their top 3 receivers. Again, I'm not playing any of these guys, but just to go through the listed starters for Buffalo, it projects to be Maryland Johnson, Boobie Curry, and Cole Harity with a timeshare at tight end. This team is a mess. Wisconsin is not. They move from the archaic 1930, 70% run rate to the Phil Longo offense, which is not just straight air raid. If you remember with Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, they had 2 1,000-yard rushers at one point. I think Wisconsin is going to be balanced. I think they use more 3 wide and spread you out, less stupid fullback stuff. And they're going to throw more, but I don't think it's going to be like a 60% pass rate or anything like UNC was last year. All that to say, they have a very efficient veteran quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, 8,900. No issues with his runs, 3,500 yards, back-to-back seasons with SMU. Wisconsin's applied for 41 points. That's enough for me. Running back Braylon Allen is one of the better plays on the slate at 6,700. Ton of positives here. I don't think they're going to be quite as heavy pass-wise as some people think. Braylon's not running into 8-man boxes. He led the country in that last year, and he has shown some pass-catching upside. Ches is there as a change of pace, but Braylon should get all he can possibly handle. At receiver, they did put out a depth chart. It might not be what some expected. It was Chimere Dike, Will Pauling, the Cincinnati transfer, and Bryson Green as the Oklahoma State transfer as the starters. Dike's 54, Pauling's 51, Bryson Green's 46. I'll play each and every one of them. The backups were CJ Williams, Keontez Lewis, and then Skylar Bell in a timeshare with Vinny Anthony. I'd rather just play the top three. They're cheap enough to not mess with. Tight end is Hayden Rucci. They had a bunch of guys leave the program. He's Stoneman. I don't know anything about him, but you could maybe use him as a start throw. But honestly, like Green, Pauling, and DK are cheap enough where you probably don't have to make those weird decisions. Last game, oh boy, Tennessee State, Eddie George's team taking on Notre Dame. S&P or SP plus, not to be confused. I always say S and P or S and P when I'm not enunciating. SP plus had this as a 51 total. Notre Dame is a 51 favorite. This isn't going to be what the actual spread is, but at the end of the day, you know Notre Dame is going to be massively favored, and Tennessee State is going to have an implied team total likely below 10 points. I don't know clearly who's going to start for Tennessee State. They do have their returning starter, Draylon Ellis, back. He's not a good mobile guy, but they listed Devion Bryan as a captain. Maybe that's just a seniority thing. I don't know. Jalen House is kind of their lead back. They have a couple guys to help. I don't want to play running back for Tennessee State. Receiver, I think the top two are going to be Karate Brenson and Dayron Johnson. No, they have like 5 guys I think are going to play receiver, which isn't great. So I'm maxing out Tennessee State. Surprise, surprise. Notre Dame got Hartman, 9,700. Too expensive for me. He did not run at all in the first game. I don't think he's going to run here. This should be the Audric Estime show once again. Guy handled a massive workload in week 1. Fumbled, but came back from it. I think we see more efficiency here. And I mean, he did average 6.8 yards per carry. This Tennessee State team is going to offer even less resistance than the Corps of Navy. You should be playing Estime, 7,200. Receiver is tricky for this team. So I'm going to pull up the routes. Give me 1 second here. This was really interesting. Most snaps, Jaden Thomas, 38, 18 routes. Second, Tobias Merriweather, 35 snaps, 20 routes. Third, Rico Flores, 19 snaps, only 6 routes. Chris Tyree, 14 snaps, 10 routes. Matt Salerno, 11 snaps, 3 routes. You can see where some of these guys played. Jaden Greathouse, the absolute baller, 8 snaps, 7 routes. He's really expensive on this slate. All this to say, I'm going back to Jaden Thomas and Tobias Merriweather. And the last note for Notre Dame pass catchers, they used a ton of 12 personnel. Mitch Evans, 50 snaps. Holden Stotts, 39 snaps. The team only played 58 snaps total. You can see how much they used two tight ends. That doesn't even include Davis Sherwood, who played 10 himself. This team did not use a wide receiver 3, so I'd be concerned with Tyree. I'd be concerned with Greathouse and the rest of them. Like, Greathouse just needs to flat out beat Merriweather or something to get on the field more. At these price tags, I would probably just play the most secure guy in Jaden Thomas, but his price is not favorable either. We can find a lot better options than these Notre Dame guys. That'll do it for us. Long breakdown. Sorry for the mishaps here and there. We're going to iron out the kinks. We're going to be flowing in week 2. But before then, we will have a video for Sunday and Monday. Make sure to check those out. Hit the thumbs up button on the way out. Leave a comment. Roast me about the Iowa mishap. Whatever you want to do. I don't care. We'll be happy and laugh at the comments, hopefully. But until next time, if you want to follow me on Twitter, ask a question. I'm at Matt_Gajewski. Until then, good luck, and we'll see you later.